After 15 years of peaceful lakeside living, I received a demolition notice from an HOA I never joined. When I investigated, I discovered something shocking. They built their $2 million clubhouse on MY land. Now, as they threaten my home, I hold the deed to their crown jewel. Revenge has never tasted sweeter. Before watching full story, comment below from where you watching. Also like and subscribe for more stories. The letter arrived on a sunny Tuesday morning. I had just finished my coffee on the porch of my beloved lake cabin, watching the sunrise reflect on the water. This place had been my sanctuary for 15 years, a quiet escape from city life where my family made countless memories. I tore open the envelope and felt my heart sink as I read the official notice. Final demolition notice. Your unauthorized structure at 145 Pine Lake Road violates Oakwood Shores HOA regulations. You have 30 days to vacate before demolition begins. My hands shook with rage. Unauthorized? I'd owned this cabin since before any HOA existed in this area. I immediately called the number listed on the letterhead. Oakwood Shores HOA, this is Victoria speaking, a crisp voice answered. This is James Miller from cabin 145. There must be some mistake. I received a demolition notice, but I've owned this property for 15 years. Mr. Miller, Victoria replied coldly, our records show your cabin violates multiple regulations. Improper paint color, unapproved dock extension, and most importantly, it sits on land now designated for community expansion. The board voted unanimously last month. This decision is final. But I was never notified about any meeting. I'm a property owner, I deserve a vote. According to our records, your property was incorporated into Oakwood Shores jurisdiction 3 years ago. Notices were sent to all affected owners. The time for objections has passed. I hung up, my mind racing. This couldn't be legal. I had never agreed to join any HOA. Something wasn't right. That evening I called my old friend Thomas, a retired real estate attorney. James, don't panic, Thomas said after hearing my story. Bring me all your property documents, everything you have. We'll figure this out. The next day, I drove to Thomas's office with a box full of papers. The original deed, property surveys, tax records, everything collected over 15 years. Thomas spent hours reviewing them, occasionally muttering to himself. Finally, he looked up with a peculiar expression. James, have you ever carefully reviewed your original property boundaries? Not in detail. Why? Thomas spread out an old survey map. According to this, your property line extends much further along the shoreline than where your cabin sits. In fact, he traced a line with his finger. It includes part of what is now their Lakeside Clubhouse. That can't be right, I said, leaning closer. It gets more interesting, Thomas continued. I checked county records. The land where they built their clubhouse 5 years ago was never properly subdivided from the original parcel, your parcel. There's no record they ever purchased that section. I sat back stunned. Are you saying? I'm saying there's a strong possibility you still legally own the land their clubhouse sits on. They built on your property without permission. For the first time since receiving the notice, I felt a glimmer of hope, and something else, the sweet possibility of revenge. Thomas advised caution. Let me do more research before you confront them. We need to be absolutely certain. The next 2 weeks were a blur of legal research, visits to the county records office, and consultations with a property surveyor. Each discovery strengthened our case. The HOA had built their $2 million Lakeside Clubhouse, the crown jewel of their community, partially on land that legally belonged to me. The HOA board, led by President Richard Vaughn, had apparently taken shortcuts during their rapid expansion 5 years ago. They had assumed the parcel boundaries matched their development plans without proper verification. Their mistake. My opportunity. Armed with irrefutable documentation, Thomas helped me prepare for the confrontation. Remember, he warned, our goal is to protect your cabin, not start a war. But after their cold dismissal and threat to demolish my family's beloved cabin, I wanted more than protection. I wanted justice. The monthly HOA board meeting was scheduled for Thursday evening at the Lakeside Clubhouse. Thomas and I arrived early, taking seats in the back of the room filled with about 40 residents. I recognized Victoria from the HOA office sitting beside a stern-looking man in an expensive suit, Richard Vaughn, the board president who had signed my demolition notice. The meeting began with routine matters: landscape approvals, community pool rules, and upcoming events. Finally, they reached new business. I stood up. I'd like to address the board regarding property dispute resolution. Richard Vaughn barely glanced at me. We don't handle individual disputes during general meetings. Submit your concern in writing for next month's agenda. Thomas nodded encouragingly. I continued anyway. My name is James Miller. I own cabin 145, which your board has scheduled for demolition next week. The room suddenly grew quiet. Richard's posture stiffened. As I said, we don't discuss. I've brought documentation you'll want to see immediately, I interrupted, approaching the table with our folder of evidence. Unless you'd prefer I discuss this with the county prosecutor instead. That got his attention. Victoria whispered something to Richard, who reluctantly gestured for me to continue. For the next 10 minutes, I methodically presented our findings, using the projector to display survey maps, property records, and deeds. With each revelation, the board members' expressions shifted from annoyance to concern to barely concealed panic. In summary, I concluded, not only do I not belong to your HOA, but according to county records and 3 independent surveyors, approximately 40% of this clubhouse, including the entire lakeside deck and boat dock, sits on my legally owned property. The room erupted in shocked murmurs. Richard attempted to regain control. These claims are outrageous. Our development plans were properly approved. Thomas stepped forward. By the County Planning Commission, yes. But the property was never legally purchased from its rightful owner, as these documents clearly show. Victoria's face had gone pale. There must be some mistake. The only mistake, I replied firmly, was sending me a demolition notice without proper verification of property rights. I've already filed for an emergency injunction against any action toward my cabin. And now I must ask, what do you intend to do about the clubhouse you built on my land? Richard dismissed the meeting to address this unexpected situation. The board retreated to a private room while homeowners buzzed with questions and speculations. Many approached me, expressing shock about the demolition plans they hadn't even known about. An hour later, Richard and Victoria requested a private meeting with Thomas and me. We need time to review these claims with our attorneys, Richard began, his earlier arrogance notably diminished. You have until my demolition deadline, 17 days, I replied. After that, I'll be enforcing my property rights as I see fit. The implications hung heavily in the air. I could potentially demand removal of their prized clubhouse or charge exorbitant rent. The power had shifted. The next 2 weeks were tense. The HOA hired 2 different law firms to challenge our claims, but the evidence was overwhelming. Thomas fielded their increasingly desperate calls while I waited, savoring the reversal of fortune. 3 days before the deadline, Richard requested another meeting. We're prepared to offer you $200,000 for the disputed property section, he said, sliding a document across the table. I didn't even look at it. I'm not interested in selling. Be reasonable, Mr. Miller. What do you want? I want 3 things, I answered calmly. First, a formal acknowledgement that my property is not and has never been part of your HOA. Second, I want written confirmation that I can maintain my cabin and dock according to county codes rather than your regulations. And third, I paused, letting the moment stretch. Richard looked like he might be ill. And third, the immediate resignation of all board members who voted for cabin demolitions without proper title verification. Your negligence nearly cost me my home. The demand was met with outrage initially, but their position was untenable. After another week of negotiations, we reached an agreement. I would grant an easement for the existing clubhouse in exchange for my 3 conditions, plus a modest annual fee for use of my land, a reminder of their costly mistake. Within a month, Oakwood Shores had a completely new HOA board. The demolition program was abandoned. Homeowners who had felt bullied by the previous administration embraced the change, many stopping by my cabin to express their gratitude. As for me, I renovated my cabin that summer, painting it the exact shade of blue the old board had forbidden. I extended my dock, added a boathouse, and hosted the biggest 4th of July barbecue the lake had ever seen. Sometimes revenge isn't about destruction, it's about restoration. Restoring balance. Restoring fairness. Restoring community. Every morning, I still enjoy my coffee on the porch, watching the sun rise over the water. But now, I also enjoy watching the new HOA board members using the clubhouse on my property, always careful to follow the rules we've established together, with respect for each other's rights and clear understanding of boundaries. The lesson cost them millions but taught me something priceless. Sometimes justice comes in unexpected packages, and always keep your property documents in order. As the summer ended and autumn painted the trees around the lake with brilliant colors, rumors spread that Richard Vaughn had put his lakeside mansion up for sale. Victoria had already moved to another state. Their grand plans for controlling every aspect of Oakwood Shores had crumbled because of a property line and one cabin owner who refused to be bullied. The new HOA president, Eleanor Jenkins, a retired judge with a reputation for fairness, invited me to serve as an advisory member on property matters. I accepted, not out of desire for power but to ensure what happened to me never happened to anyone else in our community. You could have demanded they tear down the clubhouse, Eleanor remarked during one meeting. Why didn't you? I thought about it for a moment. Because destroying something beautiful doesn't fix what was broken. Making it serve everyone fairly, that's real justice. Eleanor smiled. Well, I'm glad you chose the path you did. This community is stronger for it. I nodded, thinking about how close I'd come to losing my beloved cabin, and how that threat had ultimately led to something better for everyone at Oakwood Shores. Everyone except those who had abused their power. As I walked home along the shore that evening, I passed the clubhouse where a community dinner was underway. Families laughed and children played on the lawn that, according to the property records, belonged to me but was now shared through our agreement. Sometimes the sweetest revenge isn't getting even, it's getting better. And every month when the easement fee appears in my account, I smile knowing that justice found its way to our little corner of the lake, one property deed at a time.